I'm Andrea Ridout. Welcome to Ask Andrea, the home improvement show with a green spin. We're going to have a lot of fun today and learn many new things, especially about organic gardening. I've got Jeff Raska, who's going to join me in a few moments, and Jeff is with Texas A&M Agricultural Extension, and he's going to talk about why going organic isn't just important for you, but also for the environment. Then we're going to visit about some seeds that are from Colorado. It's a wonderful company called Botanical Interests. Going to kind of show you how to read a seed packet and what does all that stuff mean on that packet anyway. Then we're going to jump to my friend Kimyla Guice. She's here, and she's a real hip gal, and she's brought a kind of a neat thing with her that is going to be our urban greening segment today, and we're going to show you how to grow microgreens right on your kitchen counter. So we've got a lot of content. We're going to roll through this as fast as we can, and we'd sure love to hear from you. You can always email me directly at andrea@askandrea.com or visit askandrea.com for more information. Well, let's just get started with Jeff Raska. Jeff is a horticulturalist, again, with the Texas A&M Agricultural Extension Office. And Jeff, I'm so glad you could join us on Ask Andrea today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I always enjoy visiting with you because every time I do, I learn something new about gardening or chickens or whatever. But today we're going to focus a little bit on organic gardening. First of all, I'd like to ask you, for folks who might not be in Texas, are they able to get to an agricultural extension office and an expert like you?
Oh, absolutely. Every state has a agricultural college. Oklahoma State, Oregon State, Penn State. That has an extension service, which is an educational arm of the college. So we're in every county also, or every parish, or every municipality. So all you have to do is go to your local government pages, look up your extension service, and you can get as much information as you need to be successful in gardening.
Awesome. Well, I even Googled, I just tried a couple of different states like California and Ag Extension, and it popped right up. So for those of you who are listening outside the state of Texas, it's a great way to find your Ag Extension office and lots of free and great information about all kinds of topics. But today we're going to focus on organic gardening. So first of all, let's explain this term. Jeff, how do you see organic? What does that term really mean to you?
Well, it's a word that's thrown around an awful lot with a lot of different meanings, but the simplicity of organic is that when a plant is raised with no synthetic inputs, that means no chemical fertilizers, no synthetic pesticides, from a pure organic seed stock, then that's considered organic. You have to go through USDA regulations. There's a lot of specifications you have to meet, but it just makes a clean food.
Okay, terrific. So no pesticides, no chemicals.
Not synthetics.
Sort of
no synthetics involved in any of the raising
right.
of the plant.
Awesome. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about getting started in gardening. So I've learned over the years that one of the most important things is getting my soil health as optimal as I can. How important is that in growing healthy plants, getting your soil going?
Well, it's important in growing a healthy environment and a healthy life because everything feeds off the soil. We're all dependent on the soil. Healthy soil breeds healthy plants, and plants don't eat food. Plants have to absorb the nutrients from the soil, and a good healthy soil is like a big buffet. You have plenty of food available. Poor soil, plants will always struggle. You won't produce the food you might want out of it, and the plant will eventually die if it doesn't get enough nutrition. So it's extraordinarily important. That's what we always say. We have to feed the soil first.
Okay. You and I do a lot of public speaking. We actually just did a talk together a few days ago about the same topic, organic gardening. And one of the questions that I got, and I hear this question a lot, is what is the difference between compost and mulch? Can you address that for us?
Oh, absolutely, and it's a great question because I get that a lot when I'm lecturing. If you think about a forest floor, if you think about a woodland floor, the mulch would be the sticks, the twigs, the leaves, everything deposited on top of the soil. The compost would actually be the underlayer of the soil that actually envelops the plant, that the plant draws nutrients from. So it's extremely important to understand that mulch should always be on top. So when you go buy a bag of mulch at your local nursery, that's a top dressing. That is not to be mixed into the soil. There's reasons why we don't want to mix it into the soil. It takes nitrogen and such, and it should always be a top dressing. It does a lot of good for the soil, and it does a lot of good for the environment, but it's not a mix-in. Compost, true finished compost is what you want to mix into the soil.
Very good. Okay. And of course, I love mulch because here in our state, in Texas, where it's so darn hot, it helps keep that soil cooler, helps keep your plants a little cooler and moisture, and helps retain water.
Absolutely.
So you don't have to water anywhere near as often.
And it looks attractive. It looks natural.
Oh, it looks great. Yeah, sure. The plants love it. Okay. So let's talk organics. Starting with organic plants. How important is it when someone's putting in plants? They're not going to start from seeds. They're actually going to go buy plants at their nursery or their grocery store, and they see all these different ones. Some are organic and some aren't. What's the important thing about being organic?
Well, I think the most important thing, it's an ideal for people that want to do organics, because this is an organic lavender. It's labeled organic, and it will always be labeled organic on the tag. One thing about organics are there's never a GMO in organics. It's not genetically modified, so there's no modification in organics either. This is from Blue Label Farms, a very nice producer that you can find in nurseries and grocery stores. But this is a lavender, which is a beautiful lavender plant. You see how thick and how stocky it is. This is what we want to look for in a vegetable plant. It's a nice, thick, stocky plant. It's also advisable. I always advise when you pull a plant, go ahead and look at when you're in the nursery, go ahead and take it out and make sure you've got some nice white roots on here. You don't want those roots to be black. You don't want them to be dark brown. You want them to be white, almost like cooked spaghetti. And you want it to be, that's a good viable plant. You have a good start with this plant. Healthy plants grow into healthy food, so that's what we want to make sure. But organics, again, a plant doesn't care what nutrients it gets. A plant doesn't care if it gets synthetic or organic. What the big thing about what we talk about in organic environments is the fact that other things do care what you're using out there. You're talking about when you plant a plant, you're not just talking about the plant, you're talking about the insects, the birds, the lizards, the snakes. You're talking about, you have to look at the bigger picture about the total environment on this. So we're affecting the environment when we start using a lot of synthetics. Whereas organic is brought from nature. Everything that we use organically, whether it's fertilizer or they're organic pesticides, they're derived from nature, so they're already in the environment already. So we're not adding something aberrant to the, something abnormal to the environment.
Working with nature rather than against her.
You'll win that way.
You
win that way.
Well, let's move on to seeds. So one of my favorite brands, I mentioned at the top of the show, is the Botanical Interest. They're out of Colorado. It's a family company. I think they've been going for about 25 years, something like that. And they started real small, and they've gradually grown. Now you can buy them all over the country. And they're a great brand. They have organic, and then they have conventional seeds that are grown organically. And one of the things I want to mention, just because something isn't labeled organic doesn't necessarily mean it's not organic. A lot of small farmers, they can't afford the very expensive process of getting certified USDA organic. And so that's kind of the thing with Botanical Interest. Not all the seeds are labeled organic, but a lot of them are anyway. But let's look at this one here. This is a kale, I believe you got there.
This is a curly blue kale. And that's a great point about the listing organics. That's absolutely correct. Sometimes it's not listed organic, but it comes from organic sources. So be sure if your organics are important, like they are to all of us, be sure to check. A lot of things, I get a lot of questions on the seed packet. What's on the packet? And it's pretty simple to read a packet. And all the information you really need to be successful when planting this kale is on this packet. It tells you exactly the variety it is. It tells you how many days it's going to take to maturity. So when you plant it, that's how many days. This is a 55-day kale, so about 55 days you're going to have a nice producing product. It also tells you whether to sow inside or sow into the ground directly. Some things like tomatoes here, we have to sow inside. We can't sow it directly into the soils because of our seasons. This you could sow directly into the soil, and it says it on here. It will tell you the spacing. It'll tell you when to thin. It just gives you all the information is on your seed packet. So do read your seed packet. One important thing it also says, as a good organic gardener, we want to find varieties that are also resistant to diseases. And it'll show you disease-resistant charts on here. So especially with tomatoes, peppers, it'll show you everything they're resistant to. So let's put out a nice, strong plant so we don't have to put out a pesticide.
Well, and I was saying, every time I do a talk with you, I always learn a lot. And I picked up something just the other day. We were talking about organics, and I'd never really thought about this. Beginning gardeners, choose plants that have a short growing season. And this is a great tip because, number one, you're kind of getting the satisfaction of having that plant a little bit faster. You don't wear out and you don't get tired. but also the chances of something going wrong are a lot less. So talk about that for just a second, if you could, like if you've got, say, a 50-day tomato or a 70-day tomato.
Yeah, because here in our region of Texas is extremely important. We have 2 true growing seasons in Texas. We have a spring and a fall growing season. But they're very short, because what happens with tomatoes and peppers are you'll plant them in early spring. By the time the summer hits, they're going to quit producing, so they stop producing tomatoes. So you got a short window where you're going to actually get good production. So a 50-day tomato, we can pull 25, 30 pounds of tomatoes off that plant, whereas we used a 70 or 80-day tomato, we might knock that down to 20 or 30 pounds, or maybe even 15. We just want to make sure, and it depends on your region. Some regions up north have one long growing season where they can grow throughout the season, but they'll only grow one time. They don't have the 2 seasons. Here in our region is very special, because we do have 2 seasons, but they're very, very short. It's extremely important if you want to produce a lot of food. We have to produce a lot of food at our demonstration gardens, because we supply homeless shelters. So we need to produce as much food as possible.
So again, that short
very
growing
short for us.
season would be
I
great.
suggest for short seasons. Up north, you could use a bigger beefsteak, say in Ohio areas and up north, Minnesota, all that. You can do the big beefsteak tomatoes where you've got enough season to grow it out and make a large 2 or 3 pound tomato.
Well, that's great advice. And again, it's something I didn't really even understand. But I'll tell you another question I get a lot is the 2 growing season things. So there are some plants that are summer and there are some that are winter. And I remember when I was first really starting to garden 20 years ago, the one that always got me was lettuce. What do we eat in the summer? We eat lettuce. It doesn't grow in the summer. So address that for a moment, this thing of fall versus spring planting.
Okay, I can make this very, very simple. When we talk about a cool season fall plant, that's a plant that we eat the leaves, the roots, and the stems. Okay, that would be everything we eat: the leaves, roots, stems. If we're talking about a cool or a warm season plant, like our summer plants, that's where we eat the actual ovary, which is covering the seeds of the plant.
The
Tomatoes,
fruit.
peppers, the fruit, exactly. So we're actually eating the fruit. Those are warm seasons, so that means they will come into play in the warm seasons and do well and produce better in the warm seasons, whereas our cool season plants, our lettuces and kales and such, these can go into the actual winter and actually take a little freezing, a little cool weather. If I get a little ice on some of the collard greens, it makes them sweeter because they concentrate sugar. So it's important. It's very important for us being 2 growing seasons. Again, if you've got one growing season, you pretty much grow it all together. It doesn't really matter as much as if I've got a northern climate where I've got one season. I don't have to necessarily split them up. But here we definitely have to split them up to make them to be a little more productive.
Now, I, of course, love books. I'm a nut for books. And my friend Kimyla Guice is here with me, and she's going to talk for a moment about a couple of books that she and I kind of went crazy for. One is sort of home gardens, and the other is if you want to get a little more serious and get into farming. Kimyla, welcome to Ask Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. Glad to be here.
Well, it's so fun to have you, and I know a place that you like to go. You're going to tell us a little bit about.
Well, one of my favorite places to go to get books is Half Price Books. I've been going since I was a kid. Now my kids are voracious readers and how-toers, and so we go to Half Price Books a lot, and we found some great gardening books when we were there this past week. The first one is called Starter Vegetable Gardens by Barbara Pleasant, and it really is a pleasant read. I actually have some new box gardens, and I'm trying to learn how to garden myself. It's a little bit scary. This actually takes the fear out of it. It has 24 different plans that actually walk you through how to get started in organic gardening. So I love it. It's very easy, and it has charts in it. So if you like pictures, you're going to love this book. The other one, this is probably geared more towards you. I really think you got excited about this one, and it's called The Joy of Hobby Farming by Michael and Audrey Laventino. And it really delves more into gardening for people who are going to eat the vegetables and really expect for them to grow.
And even sell them.
Yes, and even sell them. It's more of a lifestyle for people who are really getting a little more serious about creating their own home farm, if you will. So those are a couple of books I would recommend that whether you're new and just getting started or really want to get a little more serious, those are some books you can check out at Half Price Books.
Well, and you and I both go crazy for Half Price because we've even had many meetings there over the years. It's a great place. And so if you have a Half Price Books in your area, be sure to drop by. They're just a wonderful resource for all kinds of books, but especially gardening. And if you don't have one, they actually sell online now, halfpricebooks.com. They'll ship anywhere in the U.S., and so do look up their website as well. Okay, so we're going to now move on a little bit more with Jeff Raska. He's visiting with us from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. And Jeff, I know you and your wife Sandra have a beautiful farm and lots of raised beds and things around your home. Why are raised beds so important? What is the whole big deal about getting your garden up off the ground?
Well, here in our area, we have a really dense clay soil, and it's very, very hard to work with. It's hard to dig into. It holds nutrients well, but it doesn't release nutrients well. So it's for a beginning gardener, instead of fighting that battle, let's win by not having to fight the battle of the clay soils. And one thing, another big advantage of raised beds, I work with a lot of schools, and we can put a raised bed on a playground, on an abandoned playground, and actually grow food on concrete. So that gives us lots and lots of options, and gives you lots and lots of options to grow. Raised beds, you can control the water. You don't waste water in it because you're watering a certain area. You're not watering the pathways, and you're not watering sidewalks. You can certainly control nutrients because we're actually fertilizing directly into the plants themselves and not doing big rows of plants. And you can control the soil. We're putting our own soil in there, so we keep a nice, healthy, organic soil, and we can make our soil very, very alluvial and easy to work with.
Well, and one of the things I love about raised beds, I've got dogs, and they're small dogs, and those raised beds keep the dogs out. I have a little short fence around it, so it's short enough that even with the bed height, I can reach over and grab my veggies or whatever, pick them, but the dogs can't get in there. And of course, those lovely bunny rabbits that like to come down the alley and get into my yard and get into my garden, the raised beds keep them out as well.
Kind of keeps them, they don't look up. They don't recognize that. They're ground dwellers. Yeah, they're ground dwellers, so they're not looking up into dig it up and in. They're looking straight down.
And so let's move on to plants. So I'm ready to get started. I've got my raised bed built. I'm going to the nursery. I'm going to pick up some plants. What are maybe just a few choices of good things to get started with?
You want me to give you the $1 million answer?
Yes.
Grow what you like to eat.
Good answer.
You'll get a gold star if you just grew tomatoes. That'd be okay. That'd be fine. If you really like tomatoes, just grow tomatoes. Grow what you like. You don't have to grow 100 things in your yard. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be a magic gardener with 150 varieties. Grow what you like. Grow a couple of varieties. Make it simple for yourself, especially new gardeners. I always, for somebody coming on new, for students, I always say we need to simplify this to make it so easy that we're almost make it as fail-proof as possible. So get what you like to eat. If I like tomatoes and I like onions and I like peppers and I like some cabbage or spinaches, I can grow those all in one large raised bed together and make a nice configuration of planting. So grow what you like to eat. Go ahead and choose good plants. That's one thing we already looked at the plant. Choose a good, healthy plant. It's not that it's science. It is science, but it's not that hard once you start getting and you start understanding. What's nice about the science of this is it's black and white. There's no gray areas. We know exactly why we fail. We can tell you exactly. I've killed 1 million plants, and I can tell you exactly why I killed 1 million plants and go back. But we can fix that. That's what's great about it. We can fix it so these new gardeners coming in don't have to do the same mistakes we do. But pick you go, organic's your choice and such. And I certainly always suggest going organic if you can, because I think that's better for the environment. But one thing about food and one thing about gardeners that's very important for everybody to start understanding this, we throw away 40% of our produce because it doesn't look pretty. And I'm a very big advocate of ugly food, very big advocate of ugly food. This is a store tomato, okay? Beautiful store tomato, beautifully grown, nice tomato, nice color and such. But if this tomato was gnarly, and this tomato had a few little peck marks in it and such, it still is valuable, maybe more valuable if I grow it organically. I'm not sure, I don't know if this is organic or not, but if I grow it organically, maybe more value to the nutrient value, but it's going to be just as good, I promise you, if not better than a store-bought tomato. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Food's not supposed to look perfect. Heirloom tomatoes, heirloom food looks big and gnarly and doesn't look particularly pretty, but it's wonderful and it helps. And we can grow tomatoes and not use any kind of pesticides whatsoever on tomatoes and make them just beautiful. And I don't care if a bird pecks this side, give it to him, because you know what that bird's doing? That bird is eating the insects that would be pecking more of this tomato. So he's basically taking a little taste of the tomato on his way to get your insects that are going to eat those tomato hornworms that get your tomatoes. He's on his way to get those hornworms. He's just taking a little snack in between to give him some energy. So that's what you get here. So you understand food doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be good, nutritious, and we can grow it that way. But we throw away way too much food and waste. We got too many hungry people who are throwing away way too much food.
Okay, so I'm getting the picture here that really, again, we're trying to work with nature. We want diversity in our gardens. We want those birds to come visit. We want butterflies and bees and all kinds of bugs and things hanging around the garden. But let's just say we've got a situation where we've got some insects taking over. You and I had talked one time about my peach trees. All my peaches got ruined one year because they just got totally taken over. So what is a good way of dealing with a pest that we're trying to get rid of, but still working with nature? We don't want to hurt the birds. We don't want to hurt the bees. We just don't want the bugs in our peaches, in our tomatoes, whatever.
Well, rule number one is identify exactly what it is. Because so many people want to grab an insecticide, and it'll be a broad spectrum insecticide and kill everything. We don't want to nuke everything. And you don't always have to kill all these insects that are coming through. Sometimes insects are passing through and will take a few bites and go on their way. They're just passing through migrations. But there are organic solutions to pests if it gets to the point where we've passed a threshold. And a threshold is basically, if I've got a tomato plant and I'm getting some holes in my tomato leaves, that's okay because I'm not going to eat the leaves anyway. That's fine. That's perfectly fine as long as they're not attacking too much of the tomatoes. If I've got a spinach or if I've got a kale and they're starting to eat the leaves, then I'm going to have to address that because that's what the food value we're going to want out of it. We want the leaf out of that. So there are organic solutions. Either you can look at it, hand picking's number one. Go pick them out. If you can see them, pick them. And remember, if you're picking them, go out at night with a flashlight because that's when they're going to be active. They're not going to be active during the day. They're hiding from the birds and the lizards and everything that's out in the environment. Go out at night, get your flashlight, turn over the leaf, and then you can really see what you've got going on, and you can identify what it is. If it's a caterpillar and there are too many to pick, you can use a BT, which is a soil-borne bacterium that will actually just kill caterpillars. But you also got to remember it's killing that monarch also, caterpillar. We'll kill other caterpillars. But if we condense our vegetable gardens into certain areas, say our raised beds that we have in the corner of the yard, and we're just basically taking care of that or treating that, then we're not really getting into our other gardens that maybe have the milkweed that we're going to feed the monarchs with. So we're not. You keep it localized, keep it very localized, and that's why I love raised beds because we can really control it. We're spraying the plant; it's not going into the soil; it's staying where the plant is, and we don't have to use near as much in there. But there's bacteria. There's spinosad, which is for beetles and such. It's again organic, derived from the soil-borne bacteriums that actually kill beetles and such. Sometimes you have to pull the trigger and do it, but you also don't just because there's a hole in the leaf, don't just start spraying. Don't go crazy because you see a few holes. That might not be anything more than just a passerby coming by. And again, if I'm not going to eat the leaf, I don't care if the leaves don't have a few holes in it. That's not going to be a big deal.
Well, and two things I've had really good success with is one is just literally spraying the plants with water. I get out there with my hose in and put it on the hose, and man, I go to town and just really give a good brisk spray, and that keeps a lot of the bugs
You can knock them off.
Yeah.
You knock them off, and if you do that a few times, they might come back on a few, but less and less will come back on the plant.
Less. Oh, yeah,
and then
much
eventually
less.
you'll knock them down, especially aphids. Aphids in our area are pretty bad at times, and it'll knock aphids off. Yeah. Hand pick, there's insecticidal soap, which is basically
I was going to say, what I ended up doing on my peaches, you had recommended an insecticidal soap.
Yeah.
I ended up making my own. It was really easy.
Yeah.
Just basically some detergent in a bottle of water, and I sprayed it and had to do it every time it rained. Just had to repeat it because, of course, it washes off. But that's okay. It was no big deal. And 2 or 3 times, my peaches were ready to harvest, and I had a really wonderful harvest that year. So that's good advice.
Yeah, organic does not mean we don't use insecticides or pesticides at times. It just means that we use what we use as a native born or natural born insecticide.
There you go.
Whether it be a chrysanthemum plant or soil borne bacterium.
So for somebody who's in an apartment, say you have a really restricted area, you don't have room to garden, or maybe you love to garden, but you want to grow something a little bit different in the house. I had an opportunity to play around with a new product. It's called the Hamama, and Kimyla is here. Kimyla's going to tell us a little bit about the Hamama, and it is a really neat little thing. So
it's exciting, actually. I'm really excited about this.
It is.
As I mentioned earlier, I am new to gardening, and I have some challenges. I wouldn't say I have a black thumb, but I might be a little bit yellow. But this actually takes the fear out of gardening. You can do it inside. You can also, not only can you do it inside, you don't actually even have to have a lot of light. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance. You have this tray, you fill this tray with water one time. That's it. And in 7 to 10 days, you have these lovely microgreens that grow, and they have different kinds of superfoods. And you simply cut them, and you can put them on your hamburgers or whatever you like to put your superfoods on. And they have a variety. And when they're done, you can simply take this out and compost it. And you can refill it with another tray. And you simply open it up, add water one time, and you put this in, and you can harvest it in 7 to 10 days. And for microgreens, 7 to 10 days is actually the optimal time that you want to eat them. That's when they're the most nutritious. So it's simple, easy to use, and actually it's really pretty too, I think. Some people have asked about the tray. It is plastic. It is BPA free. There is an optional ceramic tray. Should you want to do that, that's new to the company. So you can go to hamama.com and learn all about it.
Well, that is wonderful. And I was actually reading a study by the University of Maryland recently, and microgreens are 4 to 40 times more nutritious than the plant is. Like the one that you were showing is the daikon radish. And so it's a really nutritious way of getting that daikon radish, and they're quite tasty. They're kind of has a little bit of a kick to it. And my son and I, when we cook burgers, which of course are vegan burgers, we love putting that daikon radish on the burgers. Oh boy, it really gives it a nice flavor.
Well, they do have a variety. They have a hearty broccoli, and these are microgreens, so it's a superfood. Again, they're small. They have energizing kale, and then they also have clover. So these are a really great way to supersize your food with veggies. And I mean, 7 to 10 days, and you can just refill them over and over. It's $35 to get started, and these are only $5 to refill. $5. That's amazing. You can't go out and buy herbs in a bottle for $5. And this is obviously going to give you a lot of flavor and a huge nutritional kick.
Well, and it's a lot of fun for kids too. A great way for them to learn and get interested about gardening. Yeah. So it's wonderful. All right. Well, I cannot thank Kimyla enough, Kimyla Guice, for being with us today on Ask Andrea. Jeff Raska from Texas A&M Agricultural Extension. You guys are both such great guests, and we'll have to do this again real soon here on Ask Andrea, the home improvement show with a green spin. If you want more information about any of our guests today or any of the things we were talking about, please visit askandrea.com. We've got all the information posted there. Just want to say thanks to Half Price Books, to Hamama, or Botanical Interest Seeds, and of course our friends at Blue Label Farms for providing some products for us to show here on the show. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time right here on Ask Andrea.